Welcome to the Powercat Podcast, the original K-State sports show. Here's your host, Tim Fitzgerald.
Welcome to the Powercat Podcast. I'm Fitz, joined this week by Ryan Gilbert and Ryan Wallace. Two Ryans, one Tim. Keep track of yourself at home. We're sponsored by the Fridge Wholesale Liquor. Make sure you're stopping into the Fridge. I hear people stopped in the other night as they headed to the stadium. Thank you so much. That was very nice of you to do so, but continue to support them as we forge forth into the K-State season. Now at 3-0, the Wildcats are headed to BYU. Gills and I will be there 9:30 on Saturday night. You know, Ryan Wallace, I've done kind of a 180. I was really in favor of Big 12 After Dark until it affected me personally. Now it stinks.
So, quick story. What was that? The UT Martin game. Yep. The weather was great here in Kansas City. Me and the wife end up getting the projector out on the back deck, and I watched the second half once we put the kids to bed outside, and rolled from K-State right into Arizona and New Mexico. Because nice. I'm like, guys, I got homework to do. We play them in 2 weeks. My wife went to bed as the game is beginning, and I think I made it about halfway through the first quarter. Guys, I woke up outside on my deck as the coaches were doing the post-game handshake at 2:15. And I was like, I got to do this in 2 weeks.
Oh,
good. Well, you have it out of your system. The neighbors are like, what's this guy doing out there? Well, I was asleep.
Fantastic. Well, this is the podcast where our VIPs at Go Powercat get to ask the questions, and we answer as best we can. Hopefully, we give you good answers, preferably intelligent answers. I'm sometimes limited in that area, but I'll do my best. And now to take it over, here's Ryan Gilbert with your questions from Wabash Station.
From Ohio Powercat, are we better than we thought, or is Arizona not as good as we thought?
Wally, you go on that one. I want to hear this.
I would say that oh God, I'm going to cop out. I'm going to cop out and say both. I'm going to say a little bit of both. Look, Fitz, we're on question one, and you already said intelligent answers, and I can't even give one. Here's what I would say. I would say a little bit of both. I think that the Tulane game, I think we're going to look back weeks from now and realize that was just the defense, the first kind of hiccup where they had something thrown at them that for one reason or another, either they weren't prepared for, weren't ready for, had some guys that just weren't all there mentally, and they needed a minute to just get it adjusted, get out of there with a win, right? We come back. I think the UT Martin K-State defense, and I think the Arizona K-State defense is who that group really is, right? Mm-hmm. Just like I think the K-State offense, as we're seeing progress, is a slow development, but I think what you're seeing in the Arizona game is more what they can be. They're still not there yet, but what they can be. And then I think with Arizona on the flip side, Fitz, I would say that I thought their defense maybe through the first 2 weeks got a little bit pumped up more than they should have been. Yeah. And we kind of deconstructed them a little bit on the pregame show between myself and Brian Hanley, and maybe there were some avenues of that defense that K-State could take apart, and they did. I think offensively Arizona was pretty strong. I just think, as again we talked about on the pregame show, to me, the Arizona fans were okay with the Quali Conley kid at running back. I think the guy that is ineligible right now would have made a huge difference for them. Not to the point that they would have won, but I think would have given K-State more of a picture of what we kind of expected the Arizona offense to be. But overall, long-winded, not great answer. I'm going to say a little bit of both on both Arizona and K-State.
I agree with that. Arizona's defense isn't very good, period. It's just not. They were getting pushed around pretty consistently. Something they're going to have to try to shore up as the season goes. I mean, they're going to take it on the chin when they go to Utah in a couple of weeks. They've got this week off, so they got some time to fix things. I don't think we've seen even close to K-State's best gear. I mean, I think it's still to come. The defense is really good. And I said at the start of the season, I suspect the defense might be better than the offense. And we're all talking about the offense because of Avery. I would say as good as the offense was on Friday night, the defense was better. They gave up the drive, and then they made them go 3 and out. Then Arizona drove, and Keenan Garber made a huge play and ended that drive. And that, for all intents and purposes, was done. I think at that point in the game, they were 4 of 7 on third down conversions, and they went like 1 of 7, 1 of 8 the rest of the way. And I think that's going to be a key stat for this defense. Get them off the field, harass quarterbacks, and make them uncomfortable. And if they do that, this team's going to have a really high upside, because then the offense, if it ever finds its full capacity, they're basically doing this without much support from receivers. That I think will get worked into the offense. I'm sure that's coming from one of the questions. So I think K-State is going to get a lot better. They might play bad games, but they have a ceiling they're not even close to right now. And I said this too. This could be one of the best K-State teams in history. And if they stay away from injuries and they don't lose focus like they almost did at Tulane, and this game this weekend falls under that, you can get yourself peeking back over your shoulder, being proud of yourself for what you did to Arizona, and realizing you got Oklahoma State in a couple weeks, and go into Provo at nighttime in a whiteout and absolutely blow up your season in terms of what you expect yourself to be. So, yeah, I'm with Wally. A little bit of both.
Yeah, can we just wait till the end of the year to answer this question and see how Arizona and K-State both perform? But heading into that game, Arizona and Kansas State were both really in the same boat after struggling in each of their first 2 games. And I think both teams are now kind of headed in polar opposite directions for the remainder of the season. So that was a huge win for Kansas State. McMillan and Fafita, I think, like, they lived up to the expectations, but you guys talked about the defense wasn't there. The rest of the offense, I mean, the offensive line, Kansas State certainly won in the trenches in that regard. And so, overall, man, I think Arizona, like, you look at teams like Florida State or SMU, there's teams out there that simply are not good, not as good as we thought they would be nationally. Everybody thought they'd be heading into the year. And so it's still early. I mean, it's only 3 games under the belt for both of these teams. But right now, Kansas State has had 1 good, clean, crisp game, and there have been 2 games that have been pretty iffy. And so I certainly would point in the direction of Kansas State being, fixing riding the ship, getting on the right path. But, it's only 1 game, and you got to go out, and that makes this game against BYU equally as important to build upon that.
Guys, I was going to say real quick, I think they're a little bit better than the team that I'm going to point them back to. And they've got some experience. So like Gil said, they've got enough of a seasoned roster that they could turn things around. But I got like maybe a notch better than like old Cliff Kingsbury, Texas Tech vibes from Arizona. Like on any given night, they could come out and score 65, and those 2 guys would just go off on you. And they might have another receiver that goes crazy. But then on another given weekend, if they're just out of sync and that defense plays like they did, they'll lose to like Houston or something. I mean, I'm not predicting that, but like old Texas Tech vibes for me.
Yeah, that's a good comparison. And Jake Ratzlaff looked good. He's throwing the ball all over the place. I mean, he'll cut you apart. You let him, you sit in the zone and you don't get pressure, you're in trouble.
Fafita?
No, the BYU quarterback.
Oh, I think Fitz misunderstood.
I was going Arizona. I was saying Arizona was old Texas Tech.
Yeah.
You're not there? Okay.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know who that BYU receiver is he's talking about.
Yeah, they don't have one of those.
I didn't think so. Watching the game, I watched the Wyoming game today, and I just want to say, Wyoming, I'm sorry, but you're back to sucking at football. That team is awful. How do they go from being good to that bad? They can't do anything. It was a mess. It's a mess. So you can't gain much from watching that game.
From Contra Cat, rank the receivers on how you would prefer to see them with the metric of play usage.
Jace Brown, Keegan Johnson.
Say it.
That's my list. Trey Spivey.
There it is.
Sterling Lockett, Jaden Jackson. I feel like I'm forgetting someone I shouldn't be.
No, you're not.
Bowman.
Ty Bowman.
Look, I hate to, I don't like to hammer on kids, but you can't put Dante Cephas on the field. You can't. He's not blocking people he should block. He's not running routes. He's not catching balls. He is a negative to your offensive output. I will take Ty Bowman over him every day. Trey Spivey over him. You know what I know Ty Bowman's going to do? I know this 100%. He's going to run the right route and block the right guys and play his ass off. I'll take that over what I've seen from a couple of the guys. But they got to figure out how to get these receivers involved.
Well, they have to do something with Trey Spivey, or we're going to end up right back where we were last year, where he was flirting with playing time, and then they never got him on the field. Keegan Johnson got healthy. There were reasons why, and they could use a red shirt. There was no harm, no foul last year. This year, I think if he can't get on the field anymore, again, knowing who's in front of him and how that person in Cephas has been playing, you start to really get concerned about, is Trey Spivey looking at the exit? They've got to find a way to utilize him more. And like Fitz said, and for anybody that missed it this week on Go Powercat, I dug into data from PFF. Some people love PFF, some people hate it. I'm somewhere in between, but you cannot deny the fact Dante Cephas is at an 11.2 right now in his drop grade and his overall receiving grade. It's the lowest among any Big 12 wide receiver. It is the third lowest among any Power 5 wide receiver. And the guys that are tied or below him, according to PFF, have half as many targets as he does. On top of that, you've got the fact that Trey Spivey, again, whether you agree with PFF or disagree, he has the highest blocking grade of anybody by a wide margin at that in that room. So to me, I don't see, we heard all offseason about how there were going to be guys that at that position specifically that Matt Wells and Connor Riley wanted to try and utilize, even if they were, say there was parts of the offensive playbook and scheme that they didn't really get, that they weren't great for. They were going to find other areas that they could at least get them in. You have a strength, we're going to tap into it. And if there's a weakness, we'll try and get you off the field where, that isn't seen until we can develop it more. That's what they got to get for Trey Spivey right now. Gills, it's wild to me. And I wonder if you guys see it in the press box or if you notice it, if you go back and watch replays. Normally, if you'd have like a first-year quarterback like Avery Johnson, and this happened, I don't know if you would think anything of it. In fact, you'd probably lean towards inexperienced at quarterback. They were just out of sync. But Dante Cephas seems to be the only guy that Avery Johnson isn't on the right page with. If he was overshooting, Keegan Johnson, or you'd see Keegan Johnson, after a throw, kind of looking back at Avery like, I thought we were. That hasn't happened with anybody but Dante Cephas. As Fitz said, we're at a point now where last week you were either playing your way on the field or off. I think Dante Cephas has played his way off. I want to move forward and see more of Trey Spivey, maybe even sprinkle in some Jaden Jackson, some Sterling Lockett. They got to get some other guys out there.
Andre Davis.
There you go.
Yeah. I mean, that kid looks the part. No doubt. He looks like a big-time receiver. Look, I know the coaches probably feel obligated, particularly Coach Middleton. He brought in a player that he's familiar with. They want to play him. They know what his physical capabilities are, and they're extremely high. But you got other dudes, and other dudes that'll do the right thing and maybe not have the same ceiling. Let's do the right thing. Let's hit that block. How many times, and I'm not putting this all on one player, but how many times would Avery Johnson have broken a run if the receiver made the block, finished the block, went to the right guy to block? It's been maddening to watch receivers just mess up downfield blocking and get their quarterback tackled. So they've got to clean this up. This is a problem.
Hey guys, Jace Brown, for a program that talks about developing players, Jace Brown is a sophomore, right? Andre Davis is a redshirt freshman. Jaden Jackson, I know, is older, but Keegan Johnson's only a junior. Sterling Lockett's a sophomore. Like, we can go on about these younger players. They're not going to get their opportunities if Dante Cephas is out there, let alone if Cephas is, Marvin Harrison Jr. out there, or he's playing the way Dante Cephas has played. Regardless of that, you're not letting those younger guys develop and get those reps in. And so when he is not playing well, that becomes doubly as important, that you're also taking away those reps from those younger guys as well. And we know how much Chris Kleiman and this staff value those real game snaps early on. Even if K-State's losing or what have you, those are still very important to this staff.
Good point, Gills.
Yeah, I go back to that Arizona game when it looked like Cephas was supposed to go down and then, head to the boundary, and he just quit his route. And Avery laid the ball right where he's supposed to. And the look on Avery Johnson's face told me,
yeah,
I'm done.
Yep.
Done. You've gotten me a couple times now with breaking off patterns, and you're going to end up getting me intercepted at some point. He did it at Tulane. He got in the end zone, couldn't quite get to where he needed to go, so he just stopped. He doesn't fight through it. He doesn't try to get the penalty. He just quits. And when I see that, I'm out. I'm done. Nope.
I was also disappointed with Cephas in the Arizona game, in the sense that it seemed like at Tulane they were kind of trying to open him up as kind of the vertical guy, right? We know he's got some speed. Obviously, he's got great length, and you can see it in his Kent State highlights that he was a deep field threat guy. And so it seemed like they were kind of trying to unlock a little bit of that early on. And then they kind of came back to the Arizona game, and there was the overthrow, I think, again, down the sideline that you were talking about, Fitz. But then there was also the two other, the analysts called it an overthrow. Brando did, but I mean, Cephas had both hands on it, outstretched. A veteran like him should have been able, if you can get two paws on it, you should be able to bring it in. It's not overthrown. And then there was the other one that was a lower ball that, again, he just flat dropped, like hit him and the ball dropped.
Great play.
But right. But the two things that stood out to me is that it seemed like in the Arizona game, outside of the long overthrow, they were even trying to tap into, okay, maybe you can just be a guy that is a big enough body that we can take over the middle, right, into traffic, and you can be kind of more of our contested catch guy. And he proved that he can't do that either. So if you're not a deep threat, if you can't be the contested catch guy that can go into the middle of the field and handle the contact, again, as Fitz has said, I just don't know what you're good at this point. And again, even if Trey Spivey proves that he's not the pass catching threat that we think he is, he's blocking a hell of a lot better. And they could use that on the outside, like Fitz said too.
It's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel. I know we're bashing on Cephas here, but like, look at Carver Willis last year. Like, he got kind of thrown in there, and you just have to go out and play and move on from those mistakes. But when you don't have the trust of your quarterback, even if he's on the field, if he does well, practice, weight room, film study, whatever, what have you, who knows if Avery Johnson's even going to have that trust in him?
Well, the thing with Willis was he was the backup put into duty by an injury, and he struggled, but he's still struggling was the best choice. They knew what was behind him, and they weren't ready to play. Carver physically fits the role, and once he settled in, he was really good. I feel like we don't know that about the backups at receiver. They see him every day in practice. They're not just starting Dante Cephas because he played for Matthew Middleton at Kent State. That's not all what's going on. They see what he can do in practice. But just as when a guy's practice habits are bad, so you don't put him on the field, if a guy's practice habits are good, but then he doesn't apply it to the field, you got the same thing. In fact, you probably got a worse thing. I've seen kids plenty of times that aren't great practice players, but in a game, turn on the lights, they're golden. Dante Cephas isn't that, and hopefully he can show that quickly because I think patience is wearing out. I know it's worn out with a lot of us talking head types and a lot of fans. We'll see if the coaches feel the same way.
He's a triple check me. He's a COVID senior, right?
Yeah.
There shouldn't be any patience, and also that means, like I was saying earlier, he's not playing next year. So those younger guys.
I'm with Wall. You play this guy, and he's mediocre all year long, and then turn around and lose Trey Spivey to the portal. You've double screwed this up. You just have. You got to get Spivey on the field.
From Wildcat Pilot 88, in 3 games in, and I still haven't seen Avery Johnson change a play at the line. Is this just not needed in Connor Riley's offense, or has this ability been removed from Avery's tasks?
I just think that's part of the game plan so far. Folks, they're going to show a lot more. Avery did it in the bowl game. I mean, he did it in the bowl game and changed to a touchdown pass. So he's got it. He can read a defense pre and post snap. I also think maybe, Wally, while they understand his talent level, they don't want to put it all on his shoulders at once. Here's the whole playbook. You can change these plays. You can do this. Make sure you run the ball and throw the ball. They kind of kept it simple, and they keep adding a little bit more into his agenda every week. And I think we'll see the audibles come, honestly, probably next week. If they can get away without doing it and get away without doing some other things and win at BYU, well, then you're going to see a whole bunch of fun stuff next week with Oklahoma State.
I think it's twofold. I think the first part is exactly what you just said. They're not trying to overwhelm him. I mean, we have to remember that he is a first-year starter. I know he played a couple games last year, but it was kind of spot duty outside of Texas Tech. I mean, it was come in, kind of be a runner. He wasn't asked to do a whole lot. So this is still just, we're going into week 4 of him really leading the offense. We have to remember that. And so I'm with Fitz. I think a lot of it, what we've seen, and again, I think part of the reason, some of it, probably more of it lies on execution, but I think some of it is just the fact that they haven't really dug that deep into game plans yet because they haven't needed to. Arizona was really the first time that I think they showed a little bit more because they needed to. And again, that was probably one of their better offensive performances yet. And as Gil said off the top of this episode, they're like barely scratching the surface here, guys. And we're still 3-0. So I think that's part of it. I think the other part of it, and I'm not saying that the coaches would intentionally roll out a play that they know ahead of time isn't going to work. That's not the point. But I think they also kind of know if something were to go awry here and Avery doesn't check out of it, we got a guy that's good enough to figure it out with his wheels. Like, it's not as dire as, we've got a guy back there that, say, is Noah Fafita or is Mensa, who doesn't have the ability to scramble and improvise nearly as well as Avery. We need to make sure that there's like a 95% chance this play is going to work. With Avery, again, I'm not implying that this is happening, but like, if you couldn't get out of the play in time, couldn't radio it in to make an audible or whatever, even at 80%, 75%, he's damn good where he might be able to pick it up anyway, and you move on. But I'm not worried about that kind of stuff right now for Avery. I mean, Fitz, I'm not going to throw anybody out there, but like, there have been like senior quarterbacks at K-State that have needed help in terms of like identifying defenses and audibles. We just don't know it. But it's happened before. And it at the end of the day, if the play is working, who cares?
Yeah. Yep. We saw that in the Arizona game. This play isn't working. I'm supposed to throw it, tuck it, pick up first down. Let's try again. And that's what the magic of Avery is. He can do that more often than your average quarterback. Just get downfield, pick up the first down, reset the chains. And when you have a guy that can do that, well, you're living in high cotton. You just are.
Yeah.
I mean, you just keep moving the chains and perpetuating drives because they can't stop the quarterback. Well, eventually they're going to have to do something to stop the quarterback. And then the answer to that then is they're leaving something else that they are not doing because they're worried about the quarterback.
Last question of the first half from Snarecat3. Who are your non-conference MVPs on offense, defense, and special teams?
Offensively, it's got to be DJ Giddens. I mean, he's the hammer. He just sets a tone for the offense and sets a tone also in just going and doing your job, not getting caught up in emotion and trash talking, and just go do your job and win football games. Defensively, this is a little bit more challenging. I'm going to go with Austin Romaine. I think this kid has played really well. I'm a huge Des Purnell fan. Everyone loves Austin Moore, but I think Romaine has developed into everything we thought he could be by the time he was a senior. I can't believe the transformation he's had, not just physically, but also mentally in being prepared to play Big 12 football. Because he wore out last year, physically and mentally.
Yeah.
And now he seems really adept at it and made a huge play with Tulane, was in on a number of plays with Arizona. I love this kid. I don't know who you take off the field at linebacker because they're all three very good.
Well, you stole both of mine on both sides of the ball. So just for the sake of adding some other names in there, I think offensively, Avery Johnson's the low-hanging fruit that you didn't mention. I'm going to throw somebody out there that, and I don't think he's MVP worthy like we're talking about with DJ Giddens, but in terms of, a guy that I think has been steady, has been consistent, and was a player coming in where there was some uncertainty around. Chris Kleiman mentioned him this week in his press conference. Guys, Sam Hecht has been as advertised. And you worry, like, the line hasn't been tremendous, but Sam Hecht in a lot of ways has kind of been the steady Eddie there. And coming into the season, like, where would this team be if Sam Hecht didn't work? Like, God knows where this offense would be without Sam Hecht. He's been a linchpin. Defensively, I would have said Austin Romaine as well. I guess if I have to go outside of him, probably over the course of 3 games, I think Jacob Parrish has been pretty darn good. The Tulane game, I know there were some issues in the secondary, so maybe I put him at number 3. I'll put Brendan Mott number 2, and not just because of the Arizona game. I think there was so much focus, myself hand raised included, in that in the first 2 weeks of watching, binoculars with where's Cheaty? What's Cheaty doing? Where is Davis? Where's Ryan Davis? What's Jordan Allen doing? And we kind of just like, oh yeah, there's Brendan Mott. Yeah, he's still good. He's where you kind of brushed it to the side. And I think the Arizona game was that reminder of Brendan Mott saying, I'm still here and I'm really freaking good. Yes. And, again, with all the talk and how good those younger players are, Brendan Mott's been the one guy that like barely leaves the field through 3 weeks. And again, I think that is a testament to how good of a player he is. When Cody Steffelbein rotates and when Ryan Davis rotates and Cheaty, and Brendan Mott seems to always stay on the field for good reason. He's been tremendous. And it's a shame that he wasn't defensive player of the week this week. Travis Hunter goes out there, makes 1 interception. And of course, everybody wants to crown him. Brendan Mott's going out there with sacks, hurries, pressures, tackles. Phenomenal week from Brendan Mott.
Great.
I love the MVP for Romaine. Like we all knew that Austin Moore and Jacob Parrish, Des Purnell, Brendan Mott, we knew they were going to be solid pieces on defense, guys. I don't think we expected this from Austin Romaine. So I like most valuable player. I'm not saying he's like the best player, but most valuable player to this point in the season, Austin Romaine's been a game changer. But special teams, you guys both brushed over that. I'm not going to go Dylan Edwards, who had the blocked punt against UT Martin, against Arizona, who had Dylan Edwards does not score against Arizona if Ty Bowman doesn't have that block. And let's not forget about that Tulane game where there was that fumble on the kickoff, who was at the right place at the right time for what, objectively speaking, should have been ruled a fumble. Ty Bowman was there on cleanup duty to recover that. It was not ruled a fumble, but guys, we can all agree that was probably a fumble. So Ty Bowman's been awesome.
Good call on that.
Good call. Really good call. And, this tradition of the guy that takes over special teams and owns it, we've seen Seth Porter do it. Now Ty Bowman's doing it. I come back to this. This kid does everything right on special teams. You don't want to water that down because it's important. But let's give him a shot on offense, because if he does everything right, well, that's going to be better than what's going on. That's just my whole point with that. So first half of the Powercat Podcast, sponsored by Fridge Wholesale Liquor. On the other side, we got more of your questions from Wabash Station, and I hear we're going to talk a little women's basketball. It's football season. It's early football season, but something's cooking on the women's side of K-State basketball, and it's pretty interesting. We'll be right back.
We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
Please visit the Fridge Wholesale Liquor, located at the corner of Claflin and Westport Road in Manhattan, Kansas.
welcome back to the show. Let's return to the Cats and Dogs studio.
Welcome back to the Powercat Podcast. Fitz, Gills, and Wally, your trio for this week as we dissect what went right and wrong with Arizona heading into the BYU game. Of course, we'll have the Powercat pregame podcast in 24 hours from the release of this. So Wally and I will get to talk again tomorrow along with Big B and Gills. So I got to talk to these guys 2 days in a row. I feel bad for them. And also we will be doing another edition of the Powercat postgame podcast live. It's just not going to be at 2 a.m. or
I was going to say,
nobody's staying up to watch that. We're going to do it, I think, 10 a.m. I don't know. Big B will be on it. Maybe Wally, maybe Cole. I'm not sure. We'll have people there and they'll be there, and you can come live on Sunday morning after everyone sleeps off the victory. Because
the game will be over in the morning, Fitz.
It'll be over by 10 a.m. Yeah. Barely, but yeah. So hold on, 9:30 kick. We're looking at 1 a.m. possibly as your end time for a game. Blah.
You and Gills could do it though. You'll be hopped up on what, Mountain Dew? That's what they serve out there, right?
I don't even think they have that. When they say pop, I think they have Sprite or 7-Up. I think,
and they probably cut that off at what, 10:30 maybe.
Yeah, probably, because you can't get too crazy.
No.
They know what's going to be mixed into that drink after 10:30.
They better have good security, because this pop is going to be smuggling in 5 hour like it's hash. I'm going to have it everywhere, and I mean everywhere, to get it in. You might catch 4 bottles of 5 hour energy, but there's 2 more because you didn't check up there in that spot. Too much information.
You know what I'm like? I'm not concerned, but like, what are we going to do all day, Fitz, before the game? That's what I'm like. We're all concerned about being up late at night. Like, what are we going to do for the whole day? We're going to have nothing. I mean, I can go hiking, but you're not going to go hike with me. I don't want to go alone. So,
well, hold on. I do want to watch the Utah-Oklahoma State game, which is parked perfectly when we should nap. So I'm going to be honest. I'm going to have to get in a nap. I'm going to be like a cranky baby, a 300-pound cranky baby, and you'll have to sort that out, Gills. You don't want that. But I have given advice on a scenic tour that we need to do. Maybe we do that on Friday. We have a little romantic you and I time. We go out to the mountains and see the sunset, and do that stuff. And then maybe, go grab some ice cream, because that's the big thing to do in Provo. And then feed each other ice cream. That's my plan.
All right, on with your questions.
Don't they do like dirty soda out there? Isn't that like a thing on the West Coast?
There's this thing that they do. They've got soda fountains still, which is funny. With ice cream, I don't understand what they do. All I know is I'm not going to do that. I hear they give free ice cream to their guests. I will take that. You hand me ice cream, I'll get in your van. Let's be honest. But I think I'm going to be fine on the weird stuff, and I'll just stick to my 5 hour energy, and just I'm going to have so much caffeine in me, the entire state will feel the jolt.
I love it.
Here's more of your questions for Wabash Station. Gills, take it away.
First question of the second half is from Claws Out, Balls Out. Am I crazy for being more confident when Avery throws on the run more than in the pocket? His accuracy on the run is crazy.
It is. Is this something you saw, Wally, when in high school from him, that
absolutely
moving, he was better than in the pocket?
Absolutely. Yep. And I mean, the knock for everybody was always like, at least from the national guys, when we were trying to kind of get this initial push for Avery to be rated higher as a recruit on the national level, it was always, well, like the arm strength isn't there. And I remember myself and Kevin Flaherty used to laugh about that because he was a 3-sport athlete in high school. So he never had time to hit the weight room and develop any sort of arm strength. The minute he dedicated himself to just football and had a dedicated strength team and all that, like, you knew that was going to just naturally come. But then the other part of it is what this question's talking about, which is Avery Johnson at his best doesn't need to throw the ball 70 yards. Like, he's always going to be kind of an improviser out of the pocket, roll, throw it 30 yards or whatever downfield. I mean, that is who he is. That's what makes him an elite quarterback. But yeah, Fitz, to answer the question, he has always been just tremendous out of the pocket. Part of it is his wheels. Part of it is just his poise. Just never being overly flustered ever. And maybe that's because he does know he's that fast. But I think a lot of it is he just trusts himself and he trusts his teammates.
That play where he rolled out, avoided pressure, threw across his body, contorting to hit Dante Cephas right in the hands was amazing. I mean, they were talking Patrick Mahomes type thing. I think that's a little bit much to put on this kid right now. But when he's on the move, you're in trouble. Flushing him out of the pocket is the worst thing you can do with Avery Johnson, because he didn't. If I recall correctly, he wasn't sacked outside the pocket, was he? All three of them, the pocket collapsed in on him, and he just couldn't quite get out of it. And that's what you got to do. I thought Arizona did a good job with that. Once he steps out of that pocket and has a clean look at the field, he knows exactly where he can run, where he can throw, what he needs to do, and that's when you're in trouble with Avery Johnson.
Avery's accuracy on the run is great, like the question says. I think any quarterback out there is going to have good accuracy when they're standing confidently in a clean pocket. What Avery probably needs to work on at this point, Fitz, I don't know if he says when he's drifting back to his left or right. He's talked about it though in press conferences.
When he drops
back, that middle ground.
Yeah, when he drops, he said, when I drop back, I tend to fall back on my left foot and overthrow, not underthrow, but overthrow. And we've seen that repeatedly this season. I thought that was something interesting, and that's certainly something he knows he needs to work on. When he's kind of avoid pressure and coming back, he said, I overcompensate with my arm strength. That's what happened with Sterling Lockett. That's what's happened in other plays.
Yep.
It's crazy.
Go ahead.
It's crazy that we're talking about, if we're really nitpicking Avery Johnson, maybe the one thing right now, which you guys just alluded to, and I've seen it a couple times too, just within the pocket, is like footwork. Like that, we're talking about a guy that's just starting his first season under center, and the biggest gripe we have is footwork. I mean, I can remember, I'm a big Jake Waters guy. I remember covering his recruitment. He was the National Junior College Player of the Year, was an incredible passer. But Fitz, part of the reason why they had the carousel going between he and Daniel Sams, that first year, Jake Waters could not feel pressure very well. Like his pocket timer just wasn't there. And then finally in 2014, it came and it was tremendous. I mean, he was unbelievable. But that, I think, is what's impressed me most about Avery is the amount of times he can sense pressure and has that internal clock. Seems so far advanced skills for a kid his age.
It's impressive.
From Wildcat FN01, with as dominant as our defense was, it still feels like we are trying to figure out our front 3 or 4 rotation, like when and where guys fit best. I believe when we get that solidified, our pass rush will be even better, and this defense will get to another level. Thoughts?
Okay, so you go to the optometrist, and they do that, this one or that one, this one or that one. And that's you can choose. And that's kind of way players are. You play this guy, you play that guy. You see who you like. That's not what's happening on that front. It's this one, or that one, or possibly this one. There's so many comparisons, and then they got to sort out, okay, who's best in the pure pass rush? Who's in the mixed down area where they might run or throw? And who's good on short yardage, who needs to be out there on first down. They're still trying to sort all that out. And I think the biggest surprise for me is Travis Bates is beating out Cheedy for that role. That shows he's pretty good because Cheedy's damn good. And they're still trying to figure that 4-man front out and how to be most effective with it. But they'll sort through that. And I think we'll see some playing time shrink with some guys. I think Stufflebean will eventually see less time. He's very reliable, but not dynamic. And these guys are dynamic, and they just need to sort through and make sure everyone gets their experience and their reps. And I said, okay, this guy's ready to go. Toby looked like all Big 12 in game 1. Not so much. I mean, he's good. He's really good, but not so much. They're putting him in different situations. He's got his hand on the ground. He's in on running situations now. So they're really trying to find their best guy while developing the skills of these younger players, because they have a long ways to go in some areas, but a very high ceiling with all of them.
Yeah, I'm going to politely disagree with the poster. And because of what Fitz just said with a guy like Toby, I think what makes this pass rush so good is their ability to be flexible and versatile and rotate a ton and a ton and a ton. And you can have a guy, they're not going to let anybody ever get comfortable, because one minute you have Toby figured out when he's got his hand in the ground, and then he leaves the field, and the next time he comes on and the tackle and the offensive line coach and the coordinator get ready, and his hand isn't in the ground anymore. And, 1 minute Travis Bates is in on a 4-man front, and then he leaves, and maybe the next time he's in there as an end on a 3-man front. Like, that to me is what makes, if you lessen the rotation too much, I think then it gives opponents a chance to figure guys out, figure you out. What makes this pass rush so good is their ability to constantly be multiple. 4-man front, 3-man front, 4-man with these guys, 4-man with those guys. The minute, if Joe Klanderman decides to ever go away from that too much, and I do agree with Fitz, I think there are some players that probably could see their load lessened a little bit. But if you go too far, A, I think you wear some of those starters down, and B, I just don't know if they're more dynamic as a collective group than I think they are single-handedly, individually.
And that depth's going to be huge at altitude.
Yep.
Because if Brendan Mott's chasing the quarterback all around on 2 plays in a row, he's going to be gassed. He's going to be out of air. And they'll have to bring someone in, but they're going to bring in someone fresh. They'll constantly have fresh people out there. And, eventually I would think that would hold a huge advantage over an offensive line that's played the entire game.
Yeah, having fresh legs is going to be huge, and that's where the depth certainly comes in. To piggyback off what you guys are saying about kind of disagreeing with the post, chemistry on the defensive line isn't nearly as important as it is on the offensive line. And so when you guys, we've seen the success that Kansas State has had with rotating guys in. If that's what the question's asking, then there's my answer. If not, then I'm maybe reading it wrong. But for me, it's like it doesn't necessarily matter that you're having different guys in and out. The chemistry factor is not nearly as important as it is on offense.
Mm-hmm.
Totally agree. Totally.
From KSU number 1, BYU looks like the perfect trap game. Late night game on the road in front of a passionate crowd with a big game 1 week later. How concerned should we be?
I am. I really am. And not only a trap game, but BYU is better than we thought. They're more physical than they were last year. They seem better put together. They got a good quarterback who's impressive. So I totally agree with you. Number 1, this is a trap game. You're coming off a big win. Obviously, the team was stoked for it, focused on it. The crowd was, the fans were, the coaches were. Oklahoma State's huge in a week, enormous. Oh, yeah, you got to go to BYU. It does feel like an opportunity for a young team to lose sight of what they need to do. And I hope that's not true. I think we'll know early in this game, like we did in Tulane, that they're not there fully checked in, or if they are. And yeah, I'm with you. This is a trap game. One I did not expect to see as a trap game because BYU is simply better. And then, it gets moved to late night. They decide to have a whiteout. They never hardly lose in these games. So it's an interesting situation. I don't know what's worse, catching a night game in Ames or a Provo, but they both suck.
Yeah, I'll save my deeper insight for the pregame show, but I do agree with Fitz in the sense that it's got all the elements to be a trap game. Forget the team. To me, it's like those outside factors. It's got the really late kickoff that K-State's not used to. It's got the altitude that K-State's not used to. It's got a team like Fitz said that we didn't really expect to be this competitive. That's clearly going to be competitive, even if they are behind to K-State. I would be surprised if they got super behind, and maybe that happens. But I think, again, with all of the things going on at LaVell Edwards Stadium, they're going to keep juiced. But at the same time, this is definitely one of those games where if you take those factors out of it, and this is a 2:00 kick in Manhattan, I think it definitely I don't even want to say evens things up. I mean, I think it tips heavily in K-State's favor.
Agreed.
I'm genuinely not concerned with Oklahoma State coming up next weekend. Like, I know we could ask any coach or any player, and their answer would just be, "Oh, we're locked in on the upcoming game." That's what you would expect, but I think that's genuinely true. I don't know. I don't think they're going to be looking ahead. But when you look at that Tulane game, Kansas State struggled. Kansas State had to lock in. The coaches had to move with that sense of urgency, knowing how, especially on defense, how bad of a performance they were coming off of. Kansas State has to keep its foot on the gas after that easy victory over Arizona on Friday night. And that's the biggest question mark for me is the urgency going to be there, not only throughout the week, but from the opening kick. I mean, Arizona was a ranked team. Those players do pay attention to that. If you blow out a ranked team, you probably think you're pretty darn good, which can be true. That doesn't mean you can get complacent.
Yep.
You know, the one thing that I will add, just in case I'm not on a show between now and then, if Cole returns, and he will, yes, he will be back.
Bro's got to stop playing sometime.
He will. But win or lose these next two games, Gills, you know, the thing that I am a little worried about is these are two historically and traditionally, and we're seeing it again this year, physical ass teams. And so win or lose, I'm concerned. Good news is that K-State's going into this week healthy, which is kind of a rarity. It seems like usually by this point of the year, there's some starter that we're talking about that's beat up. But I'm really curious to see where this team's health is, not only coming out of Provo, but then coming out of Oklahoma State as well. These are traditionally very, very physical outfits.
Agreed.
Okay. Any more football thoughts from either of you before we move
let's
on
do this real quick before we get to the women's hoops. Who do you think wins, Utah or Oklahoma State?
I am going to say no. I feel semi-confident in this. I think Oklahoma State. I think we're sleeping on Oklahoma State a little bit. I think everybody's focused on Utah. I think everybody's focused on Kansas State. As Gil said up front, there was some hoopla around Arizona there for a while. There's some growing hoopla around UCF, and there's Oklahoma State. They weren't pretty against Arkansas. They managed to find ways. And the other thing is, you know, there's the uncertainty about Cam Rising leaves me a little uneasy about Utah. I think so much of that offense is built around just how good he is and how poised he is. But the other thing is Oklahoma State is statistically pretty balanced. I mean, they've got playmakers at every single level on offense and defense. And so to me, you know, the idea of them not being able to get something out of one guy at any of those levels to the point where they just can't win at home. I'm going to say Oklahoma State. I think Mike Gundy's used to this. I don't know if Utah has ever seen what they'll see at Boone Pickens. I mean, you go up to Autzen. There's some places in the Pac-12 that get loud, but I mean, the confined space that they have to deal with, if Oklahoma State's competitive in that game going into the fourth quarter, I just don't see a way that they're gonna give that one up. That's such a tough place to win a road game.
I agree with everything you just said.
There's going to be a piece up in the morning on Go Powercat. I kind of just looked ahead at Kansas State's odds and not only betting odds, but also the analytics. So I did like FanDuel odds for K-State to win conference, all that stuff, the championship, and also what ESPN's FPI, the analytics, thought. And I thought it was interesting. I don't necessarily have an answer for you, Fitz, but according to FanDuel, Utah's got the number one odds to win the Big 12. The analytics are not nearly as polite to Utah in that regard. Now, not that Oklahoma State was high in either, but it's interesting. What do you trust more there, the analytics or the bettors?
Good point. Good point. I think the thing with Utah is they get through this game, they're in pretty good shape.
Yeah,
I mean,
true.
They didn't get Arizona potentially isn't as nearly as good as we thought. I mean, that's who they've got next week. So they're in good shape if they win this. And Oklahoma State still has to come to Manhattan. And, you know, there's just so much happening. These schedules are front loaded in a way that seems intentional. Like they wanted to get eyes on this conference early, so the eyes come back to other games. And it's making the early part of this season very interesting. And we'll have a lot of the Big 12 race in part sorted out before September's over, which is crazy.
Mike Gundy, didn't he mention that earlier this week?
Yeah.
Pretty sure he did. But so if you're a K-State fan, who do you want to win? Do you want Oklahoma State coming in off of a win or off of a loss?
Win.
Oklahoma State.
Yeah. You want to beat the team that just won.
Yep.
You don't want to, you don't.
Well, so you're talking about in
much.
terms of the standings, right?
Yeah. I mean,
okay, but I'm just talking about like the trap game aspect, the mentality, how Oklahoma State's going to respond after its game. You still think win?
Still win.
Yeah,
yep.
Absolutely. I do. I mean, you then get to beat a team that just probably jumps significantly in the ratings. You don't get Utah in the regular season.
Yeah.
So if you can get someone that jumps up close to the top 10 by winning that game, well, yeah, that's going to help you even more.
Cool. All righty. Last question from Third Gen Wildcat. Not football, and I know you guys don't discuss a lot of recruiting on the podcast, but I'm wondering if you could discuss the women's basketball recruiting, put into perspective what Coach Mitty and his staff are accomplishing in recruiting. It seems quite noteworthy to me.
It's impressive. 5-star and a 4-star in the course of a few days. And I'm going to say this. Wildcat NIL isn't just focused on football and men's basketball. They do work for volleyball, baseball, and women's basketball. And I think that work is paying off. I've said that if NIL is used in these sports, that might be how K-State wins the first national championship, because $100K in NIL money in women's basketball is probably huge compared to the $100K in men's basketball. So you get a lot of bang for your buck. I hope they make the most of it, but boy, he went out and found some young ladies that can play hoops, and now he's got to put them together. But it's going to be one of those coaches apparently now that it's going to recruit at an extremely high level. And part of the selling is how invested K-State fans are in athletics. And it's not just football. It's not just men's basketball. They show up for volleyball, women's basketball, baseball when they're doing good. Anything that's spectator related and the team's pretty decent, fans are there. And that's not true other places. That's just not true. Maybe they have a baseball team or a softball team that's incredible. They show up for those games. But it doesn't matter the sport. If it's a spectator sport and the team's good, K-State fans show up and they'll be packing Bramlage Coliseum for women's basketball. That mixed with NIL, you're going to get a lot of good players.
Yep. My thing, and maybe it's stating the obvious, maybe it's like sounds stupid, but like, and again, I don't have, I'll be honest. I don't interact with a lot of like women's coaches, so I don't have a whole lot to go on outside of like what we see in TV interviews. Right. There's just something very wholesome about the staff that Jeff Mitty has put together, and Jeff Mitty, the person. Like they strike me as people that, we've heard Chris Kleiman say, and really any coach for that matter, that always talks about recruiting being relationship driven. It's all about, what kind of, can you interact with somebody? Can you build a relationship with somebody? Then you're probably going to be an effective recruiter. And Jeff Mitty he just is so, again, like you just want to sit down and like talk with him for hours. Like he's he could be like your next door neighbor. And I think that just permeates on parents, on the players, on their high school coaches. And I think it also extends to his support staff as well. And so then they've developed those relationships with Coach Mitty and his staff. And then you come on and you see campus for what it is. And you see what Jerome Tang is doing. And you're on the sidelines for the football team and the passion that you see in the stadium too. Because I think we've seen a lot of these coaches interact and intercept in terms of kind of using another sport for their unofficial and official visits, right? So that you kind of get a taste of athletics as a whole. It makes sense, Fitz, why they're doing so well in recruiting. Just because, again, I don't have a whole lot to go off of, but outside of like a guy, let's use Gino Auriemma or why can I not think of her name at LSU, former Baylor.
Oh, Kim Mulkey.
Let's use them as examples, right? If you take away, and I know it's a big takeaway, we're asking a lot here. You take away their resume, right? Which kind of speaks for itself. That's why they are the recruiters they are. Their personalities are a little abrasive. You know what I mean? Like they are what they are because they've built a resume, and that's why they are what who they are, and they're good basketball coaches all themselves. But there's something about Coach Mitty to me that just makes him genuine and makes him and his staff highly attractive to want to play for.
I think I'll just say it this way. I think it'd be really fun to sit down and have a beer with Chris Kleiman or Jerome Tang. That might need to be a daiquiri. I'm not sure. But I probably would pick Jeff Mitty out of that group.
Yeah.
Just because he is kind of the guy that let's sit out in the garage and have some beers. You know, that type of guy. Heck, I feel the same way with track and volleyball and baseball. Yeah, I would absolutely want to have beers with an old Irish baseball coach. That sounds like it's up my alley. Folks, you are blessed. Gene Taylor has stocked his athletic department, not just with good coaches, but with exceptionally good people. And it's fun to cover. It really is. And not have any abrasive people out there that are so into what they're doing that they don't care about the other sports. Everyone's rowing in the same direction. And I think really cool times are ahead for K-State athletics.
Hey, Gills.
What? Yes, sir.
I'm going to put you on the spot for a second to finish this out.
Oh.
Do you think indirectly, right? Because I mean, they put enough pressure on themselves, but do you think indirectly there's some pressure on Coach Tang right now? You've got Chris Kleiman over here that's got Lincoln Cure. You've got Coach Mitty over here that's picking up 5 and 4 stars left and right. Is there some indirect pressure you think this men's basketball staff is feeling?
Yeah, I mean, also look at the Arkansas scare in the offseason, like Tang getting his raise and for his whole staff for that matter. We got to remember K-State did not make the tournament last year. So certainly you got to go on the court and prove that last year was the fluke and not year number 1, which I think we all agree with everything that happened with Naquan Tomlin certainly was the fluke, but prove it. One more thing here. We'd be remiss if we didn't mention Ethan, your nephew Fitz. He's been killing it. He genuinely, he knows his stuff with women's basketball and volleyball. So if you're not subscribing at Go Powercat, a lot of his stuff is over behind the paywall on Wabash Station, our message boards, but he genuinely has been killing it with women's basketball. Yes. And obviously right now it's football, but he knows this stuff.
He really does. He does his homework. He does a lot of digging. Yeah, it's really cool. He's been a great addition to the staff. I hope this was a 5-star podcast. I don't know that it was. We might be a low 3, but I'll take it. We're a developmental podcast. We can get there.
It could be a good way, Fitz, to like clickbait people into listening. You title it something with 5-star and they watch till the end to find out it's just about women's basketball. With all due respect.
About us. It's about us. It's always about us, Gilbert. Never forget that. Powercat pregame podcast 24 hours away. Hope you enjoyed this one. There's more to come. K-State and BYU, 9:30 on Saturday night in Provo. Thanks for listening or watching or whatever you just did.
This has been a GoPowercat.com and Spirit Street production. Please support this show by subscribing to this YouTube channel or follow us on your favorite podcast platform.